Hello. Hello. Hello, everybody. We will get started here in about 2 minutes. All right, as we get ready to start, we're getting several joining in. Can you guys put your names in the chat box? I think most are in your actual name there, but I know we have someone with us on an iPhone. And then we have Jay Taylor. But I can see Emily, Jerica, and Teresa. Hi, Nancy. It's always hard with iPhones knowing who's on the other end when it just pops up as a number or as an iPhone. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and thank you all for joining us. This is the last of our life skills sessions. This is our soft skills for hard workers and kind of looking at that preparation for employment and how we can sell ourselves even if we don't have the most impressive resume sometimes. So we'll go ahead and get started. So for the last time, my name is Kayla Richard, and I work here at the Center for Excellence in Disabilities in Morgantown through West Virginia University. So the first thing we're going to look at is hard skills versus soft skills and what those actually are. And we'll dive a little deeper here in just a second. But our hard skills, those are our things that we're actually going to be able to put on a resume. Those are our things that we can actually demonstrate in a way that our employer will be able to see that we can do those things. Where our soft skills, oftentimes called employability skills, those are our things that we take from job to job that we could do in any workplace that we can showcase. And a lot of times those are our things that we're not going to be able to put on a resume. We may be able to bring them forth in an interview or in a cover letter, but unfortunately, it's not going to be the things that are just going to jump off the page when we fill out an application. So we really need to look at ways to highlight those things in a way that makes us look more employable to people that we're applying to work for. So hard skills, what is a hard skill? So it is a teachable ability or skill that you can do or you can show. So these are things, we've got a little image on the side, but can you speak another language? I don't know if anyone watches Friends, but when I used to teach this to students, we used to talk about, there's a scene in Friends with the character Joey, where he lies on an application and on his resume and says he can speak fluent French. He obviously cannot. These are things that it is going to be very apparent you cannot do if you put it on your resume or your application as well. So having a hard skill is excellent, but unfortunately, a lot of us don't have a lot of hard skills that we can put on resumes, especially when we're starting out or when there's been a long gap in employment. Things that maybe we learned in a classroom, a training. Are we CPR certified? That would be a hard skill. Different degrees, certificates, how fast can we type? The good thing is we are starting to get more and more ways to showcase some of these hard skills that maybe we didn't really have before. If we have Indeed profiles, we now have badges and certificates that we can earn to show employers how good we are at certain things. And those actually are starting to come into play for our soft skills as well, which is excellent because not all of us have college degrees or money to put out for certain certificates that may not hold a lot of weight in the long run anyway. So here's those soft skills. Personal attributes that enable someone to complete tasks effectively. And again, these are our things that aren't necessarily quantifiable. These are our things, though, that we can take from job to job with us. An example that oftentimes comes into play, if we have our Serve Safe or our food handlers card, those are things that are very, very finite to one particular type of job. If we are going and paying money for that certification, and then we decide we're not working in food handling anymore, or in customer service dealing with food, that is something that's a hard skill, but we no longer really use going to another job. Whereas these soft skills, we're going to be able to take and we're really going to be able to showcase them from job to job, whatever it is that we're doing. But unfortunately, we can't really show it on a resume. We're a great leader. We're a great teammate. We communicate very effectively. Those aren't really things we're putting on our resume. So how do we show that? If my computer wants to work, let's see. Oh, no, we're going to go straight to the end, apparently. Oh, why did it do that? Let's see. Okay, it just took the entire rest of our PowerPoint away. I promise there's more on here. Let's see if it will start from there. There we go. Okay, so soft skills. What does this mean in the grand scheme of things? So Harvard University, in correlation with a couple other programs, did a study that showed that 85% of job success comes from having well-developed soft skills, not from your technical or hard skills and abilities. That was only about 15%. And when employers are actually being polled and surveyed, they're saying that they would prefer to have people with very, very good soft skills or employability skills over certain certificates and trainings and those hard skills, because they can get that for their employees. But it's a lot harder and takes a lot more work to teach someone to be a team player or good at problem solving. Some of those things we're just naturally good at. But again, we can't really showcase that all the time. So looking at how we're better able to do that. Also knowing what actual soft skills are. So being able to showcase this starts with, what is a soft skill? What am I good at? And what can I actually bring to the table to an employer? And coming from a person who typically works with students and young people, or individuals who haven't really had an opportunity to build a long resume with a lot of different employments, what do I actually bring to the table when I don't have a long resume? Are you good at communication? How is your attitude? Your leadership? How well do you work as a team? These are four, there's six that tend to range in the top by surveys by employers, but these are four of the top ones that employers are looking at. Communication doesn't just refer to your ability to speak to people or speak publicly. This also goes into how well do, and kind of ties in with our teamwork, but how well do you communicate? How well do you get your point across? Do you follow the chain of command? How are you at writing an email? How are you at getting back to people? How are you at being articulate and being tactful? That's a big one that plays into attitude too. One's ability to respond positively or negatively toward ideas and things that not necessarily supervisors, but definitely those in charge, as well as coworkers and peers, and maybe people that are even under us. How well are we responding to positive and negative feedback? How good are we at giving feedback? And we also know that when it comes to attitude, we have people that could have a resume a mile long that are not great at this. But if they had to start at the bottom of the totem pole again, they probably would not work their way up very fast if their attitude is not great. So being able to have a good attitude. Leadership, the ability to take control of a situation in about any environment that you can think of, or your ability to keep yourself organized without direct input from a supervisor. So not only are you able to help and lead in situations with other people, but can you keep yourself organized and on task and show initiative? Teamwork. Unfortunately, every job we do, even right now in a world where everything is coming from being remote and maybe working from home on your own, this teamwork and communication is probably as big now as it ever has been, because in leadership, all of this kind of ties together, because you have to take the initiative to reach out and communicate when you don't know what's going on. You have to take the initiative of working on your own, but also being able to correspond with other people that you're not seeing on a daily basis. That's probably harder now than ever. And if we're able to do that, if we've been working remote, if we did work a remote position, no matter how small, Those are things that we've learned that we can really showcase, especially in an interview situation. The other high value soft skills, your work ethic. Do you come to work on time? Do you come to work at all? A lot of employers say, we can hire 1 million people, but the struggle is getting them to show up to the first day of work. You just showing up says a lot to an employer. Completing tasks in a timely manner. Are you not doing things on time? Are you procrastinating a little bit? Are you able to stay focused and organized? Problem solving. This isn't something that can really be taught. It can be practiced, but some people are just naturally good at problem solving. So can you take and understand information you're given and use that to find answers to solve a problem or to fix a problem in an agreeable way? So a way that's going to get the most for all sides. If you were in with our dealing with conflict session a few months ago, that was one we kind of talked about, was what kind of a personality type did you have, and how do you work with other people in coming to an agreement? So are you able to do that in a way that benefits everyone in the most effective way in the workplace? So the big question comes into, if I can't put it on my resume, what good is it? I need these things to help me get a job. Obviously, you can showcase them once you are hired, because you're going to be able to put that into play and show every day on the job that you're showcasing these soft skills. But how do you showcase it if you can't put these on a resume? And that's what an employer looks like. We have this small piece of paper to really highlight ourselves in order to get an interview. Once we get an interview, we can really start highlighting these and how we respond to questions. But on a resume, what do we do? So number one, seek help to make your resume the most attractive that it can be. There are tons. If you go onto Google, there are tons of websites, some that are not free, but many that are. Google will give you examples. You can look at things that are posted. However, the big problem is what actually goes on our resume. What makes our resume look good? How do we stand out? So anything that can make us look better than the other people that are applying for our job, the same job that we're looking for, that we're interested in, is going to make us stand out. Highlight these things in your cover letter. So a lot of people, we fill out an application and we don't do anything else. Some applications won't even ask for a resume. But if we can attach a resume, if we can include a cover letter, whether a physical letter or an email, then we are also going to stand out. We look more professional, even if our resume doesn't have as much on it, even if our application doesn't have as much on it. We also want to use our soft skills when we're answering interview questions. And these interview questions, a lot of times we think interview. I go in person, I sit down, I'm very nervous, I talk to my interviewer. Interviews start from your phone call. So if your resume, if your application actually gets you a phone call to schedule an interview, to ask more questions, even that initial interview of what was your name, what was your address, when are your availabilities, that really short, informal interview, those are all interview opportunities. So make sure you're really utilizing and talking about the things that you're good at. You like working with other people. You're available to work at different shifts, whatever that might be, to really show that you're flexible. Another soft skill. Relate your soft skills to hard skills. So if you do have a couple hard skills that you're able to put on your resume, are there other things that you can tie into that? So maybe you are CPR certified. Why did you get that CPR certification? Have you worked with children? Your other experience. In order to become CPR certified, I had to work to coordinate that. I needed that CPR certification because I was working with a lot of different children, and you never know what children are going to do. So being able to relate those hard skills back to soft skills can be very, very good too. A few examples. So these are three. I picked women. Our base population signed up for these sessions have mainly been women. We do have some gentlemen as well, but here are 3 millionaires that did not have a long resume. In fact, they didn't have a lot of hard skills when they started at all. They did not have college degrees. They did not have a lot of training, but they went on to make $1 million companies. Ann Beeler was from Annie Ann's. We have Coco Chanel from Chanel, and Mary Kay Ash, if anyone has ever purchased makeup or any other materials from Mary Kay, that went into her industry as well. So these people were able to sell themselves and make themselves millionaires where they started from really nothing. So are these, extreme examples? Yes, but it does happen. It can happen. And by making sure we know where to look and can sell ourselves, not saying anyone's going to go on to be a millionaire, but we can be successful. And that's what we're really looking for when we're applying for jobs. So where do we look? How do we help sell ourselves? How can we work to expand on these soft skills? Having a LinkedIn profile, networking. That's one that working with students and with individuals that don't have a lot of experience, networking is huge. Talking to people, getting your name out there. And that can be for something like customer service, really getting your name out there, working when you are in employment, even if you've bounced around to several jobs, making sure that you are doing a good job in those positions, because then you get good references. They will talk about you to people, and hopefully that will help you work up the ladder. Online learning. Any chance you can get. Indeed is one that will come up again, but Indeed is one that they have you put on your resume, you start applying for jobs, everything's linked together. They have a typing test. They have a problem solving, almost like a badge that you can earn, where they will give you situations to answer. How would you handle yourself in the workplace in these certain situations? And then employers can see all of that. They can see how good you did. The plus side is if you don't do well on any of those simulations, you can take it off your profile. So that is also a win-win too. But as you go through those and you learn more, you can take those simulations and it really showcases what you're good at. If you're wanting to work in customer service or where you have to work with people, there are badges in those simulations on Indeed and other websites where you can go in and how do you communicate? How do you settle conflict? Kind of like when you get those interview questions of what do you do in this situation? You can actually go through simulations and show how you would handle things. You can also do different types of lectures. Right now, with everything being virtual and remote, there are so many free opportunities that are out there. There's also paid opportunities, obviously, but there are a lot. The Coursera, I'm going to say that's how you pronounce that. I may be very wrong in saying that. But they actually offer a lot of free trainings. They give you a little certificate when you finish them. They also have paid versions on all of these websites. They have paid versions too, but they have a lot of free things. You can go on, you get little certificates, and then those may be things you could actually put on your resume. It definitely could be things that you could include on your application if asked for, or things that are relevant you could bring up in an interview. So our free courses. You also can learn the Allison program. I was going in and exploring it a little bit because that was one that was talked about in a training that I went to. I had never heard of that one before. So going in and exploring a little bit, again, there are things that you do have to pay for, but there's so much on all of these that are also free. If nothing else, refresh skills. Some people have been out of market of employment for quite some time, maybe because of the pandemic, maybe because of being laid off, maybe because you started a family, you moved and your spouse got a job, but you've been the stay-home mom or dad, or just taking a while to get back into the groove of things. So going in and really honing in or refreshing things that you haven't got to experience for a while. All of those are good things just to go in and touch up on. Learning lectures. If you are trying to find, maybe you went to Indeed, you went to Monster, you went to one of these job search engines, you found a position, you're like, that really sounds interesting, but I don't know a lot about that, or I haven't worked in that for so long. A good example, believe it or not, I went to school to work in agriculture. I have not had anything to do with agriculture for over a decade. And my husband often jokes, do you want to go back and do that? I don't know that I remember enough to go back and get a job in that. But I oftentimes will find myself going in TED Talks. If you went into my YouTube history, I have watched so many TED Talks on things in agriculture, or things that have nothing to do with my current employment, but I still find it interesting. Or there's a new technique or a new research study that's came out, and I'll find myself going in and watching those lectures just because I still like to be up to date on what's happening, because I spent so much of my life in college and money learning those things, and now I don't use it. But what if I want to go back and do that again? Or maybe it's, I didn't go to college, but now I'm really interested in the medical field. Maybe I don't know what I want to do in that. I know that I could go and get, my LPN, or I don't really want to spend enough time going to get my bachelor's in nursing or my RN, but I'm very interested in the medical field. So going in, watching these learning lectures, watching demonstrations of different things, maybe there's something that I really find that I like, that then I could go in and pursue, or I could start building skills, or I could start getting certified in little things before going all in on a college education to do these. A lot of those things don't even require a college education anymore, but certain certificates or maybe an associate's, rather than shelling out thousands of dollars on a bachelor's or a master's degree. LinkedIn is huge. Anything that connection, that networking, where we can get our name out there. Again, we can tie soft skills into our LinkedIn accounts. We can attach our resume. The college students, the new thing is the handshake application that you can also use, which mirrors and looks a lot like LinkedIn, but other people are looking to fill positions now more than everywhere. Anywhere you go, they have signs in the window that say, now hiring. My son, who is 6, he reads every one of those signs when we go somewhere, and he's like, why aren't people working here, Mom? We've got so many open positions. Granted, you may not want to work in all of those places, but online in places like LinkedIn, all those employers are going out and they are looking for people, and they're hiring people to go out and find people to come into these positions. So if you have a LinkedIn account or handshake or whatever it might be, then you might have someone reach out to you, especially when you have these soft skills and these badges and these certificates tied to those accounts that you may not be able to showcase on a resume, but they stand out on these websites. And that's even if you have not had a lot of employment or a lot of experience in certain places. You may have just the thing that an employer is looking for, and they will reach out to you. When we look for jobs, the big thing is we have Indeed is definitely one of the most probably diverse. I don't want to say user-friendly. It is pretty user-friendly, but there's other search engines that are just as user-friendly. But it does allow you to upload your resume, to keep it on file, to start getting those different certifications, really selling yourself, where employers can also come in and look at that. It's not just you applying, it's also employers coming to you and looking at what you might have on file. Make sure that you are also looking at, some of them have your work value assessments or things that you might be interested in, because it may give you recommendations on positions that are available, or it may link, you applied for these 5 positions, so here's another one that may match with your interests. Exploring openings. A lot of those are set up where you enter a keyword. Some keywords aren't going to be obvious. My experience, if I put in agriculture, I may not find a job listed as agriculture that I'm interested in. But now I've also worked in education. So if I tie agriculture / education / maybe management, if you're interested, if you're working up the chain. So what could you do next? Look at where you've started, look at what you've done, but also don't be afraid to kind of look ahead. Some of those qualifications, a lot of times we look at qualifications, they may just be preferred qualifications. They may not be required qualifications. So also don't sell yourself short. What does it hurt to apply for a job and then not get it. If you have your resume updated, you have a profile set up in something like Indeed, other than a few minutes to apply, it's not really costing you anything. So don't be afraid to apply for something. Worst case, you don't get a call. That's really it. You put forth a few minutes, but you don't get a call. There's nothing wrong with that. Then we look at what is a resume. Again, if you do not have a lot of history in employment, you maybe have worked in something like customer service and you've never actually had to make a resume. If you've never had to make a resume, you can go on to Google and you can look up a million different examples of what a resume is. However, there are going to be some very, very wrong examples when you do this as well. There are tons of people out there. I am one of them. If you are sitting in here and either yourself or maybe a client you're working with, some of you, depending on your positions, you may help with resume building. But if you need help with it, never hesitate to reach out to someone to ask for information. What should go on my resume? You can find templates that are 3 pages long. We should never have a 3-page resume. Even if you are at the end of your career and you have done everything under the moon, you still should be able, it's a snapshot, it's a quick overview, selling yourself, and then we get to expand on that in our interview, in our cover letter, in our CV. If you are on a professional level, maybe that we have more than just our resume giving detailed information of our employment history or our accomplishments. But on a resume, we're really looking at 1-page snapshot of what we've done. What's our career history? What is our maybe volunteer or professional experience if we don't have a lot of history to help sell ourselves? So what actually goes on our resume? There are a million things you could potentially put on a resume, but we want our contact details. We want them to be able to get back in touch with us. An objective, possibly. You do not have to have an intro or an objective on every resume, but sometimes it is needed. Our education, our work history, and then what's our relevant skills or accomplishments. We don't have to put everything on there. If we're working with someone or you yourself are very young, at a certain time, we stop putting our high school accomplishments on there. When I used to work with high school students, they would, want to put that they won the 3rd grade spelling bee. That's a great accomplishment. But once we start getting to high school, getting to college, we need to start putting grown-up things on there. Could that be something you tie into an interview as a story? Maybe. But we put more relevant skills and accomplishments as we go on. For our contact details, what do we actually put on a resume? So first and last name. Make sure that it is the name, either the name that you go by or your professional name. Either are fine, but be consistent with whatever it is. Your phone number, your email. I cannot stress this one enough. Please make a professional email account. If your email is still Big Booty Girl 69, do not put that on your resume. That is not a professional email. Does that happen? Yes. Also, if you are a student and you're getting ready to graduate, make a professional email, because your student email is going to go away. And then if that's what you're applying with, you may not get job offers because they're going to an email you can no longer access. So please make your own professional email. Gmail tends to be pretty universal. You also have Hotmail or Yahoo. Gmail tends to have a lot more professional things tied to it. But go and use something with your name, maybe a number if needed, but my professional, if it's not tied to my work account, is Kayla.Richard. So that way I've got my name in there. I'm not putting too much information, but I'm still being professional with what I'm including. You can also put, if you have a personal web page or a LinkedIn account, you can put that link in so your employers can actually go in and look you up and find some information. It astounds me. I don't think was a position when I went into the professional world, but it definitely is now. Whenever you apply for a job, there is probably someone at that job that their sole role for being in employment is to look at your social media or to look at trying to find something on you that makes you not a good hire. And they will look at those things. So if you give them a piece of social media, LinkedIn counts as that they can actually go in and find information, it actually makes you look a little bit better. Do not include your physical address. Are you from, me personally, I live in Morgantown, so I would put Morgantown, West Virginia, but I probably am not going to tell you my home address. They don't really need to know that. Your city, your state, maybe zip code is enough. That's absolutely fine. If you put an objective, what is your objective? Are you selling yourself or are you just filling space? It's a quick snippet sentence saying what your actual objective is in applying for this job. Make sure you're changing your objective up between jobs that you are applying for, because if you're looking for a management position, but you apply for a job that's not in management, then your objective didn't really do you any good. So if you're planning on applying for a whole lot of jobs using the same resume, don't use an objective, because it's going to be too hard to differentiate what you're actually wanting to do on that resume. It can be listed as an objective. So as you're putting work history, whatever it is, you can put objective. But again, you don't have to. You could have just a little, almost like your elevator speech in a statement, but it's not going to be paragraphs. It's just a sentence, really your elevator speech of your resume, rather. And do not write a cover letter onto your resume. Those are two very different things. So our resume is a snapshot. That again, if your objective is a whole paragraph, it goes into your cover letter. It is not included on your resume. It is not needed. Your education. What school did you attend? Can you put your high school? Yeah, absolutely, you can. Definitely put your college information if you attended college, or wherever you attended and got your highest degree earned. Did you have different majors or minors? You could include that with your college or even your high school, depending on what your high school education was. You can list your GPA. You do not have to. It is not required. In fact, if you didn't have at least a 3.8, I probably would not include your GPA, because that's not really highlighting your abilities. Just leave it off. Your accomplishments. Were you on the dean's list or the honor roll? And then relevant coursework or maybe placements. An example, I went for agriculture education. So if I were student teaching, then maybe I would put that as a placement. Or if I were a teaching assistant while in college, that might be something I list. Otherwise, you don't have to put the classes you took. If they're worried about that, they'll ask for a transcript of your education. Otherwise, you don't have to get that specific with your education on your resume. Your experience, always go in reverse chronological. So the most recent job you held, put that at the top of your list and then work backwards. Now, if you have really jumped around from job to job, there may be a time where you don't put every job in there. You put the things that are most relevant. You also may want to put the ones that you worked the longest at, or the ones you may have the best reference from your boss. So again, these would be things that if you reach out to get help on a resume, someone could help you kind of differentiate what to put on there and what not to. What was your title in those positions? Who did you work for? When did you work? Having the dates worked is really big, which is why if you went in, say McDonald's, you worked at McDonald's, but you were only there for 3 months, probably not something to put on your resume unless there's a good reason why you left that job, because that might make more questions in your employer's mind than really benefit you. Also, what did you do at that job? What were your key responsibilities? What were your key accomplishments while working there? Really just a short bulleted list giving a little more detail, which again is why you can't put 12 jobs on a resume, because there's just simply not room. Skills and accomplishments. Skills and accomplishments relevant to your position. If it has nothing to do with your current job, or it is not a really big highlight, it doesn't need to be on there unless you need to make up some room. If you don't have a lot of experience, then those skills and accomplishments might come into play. Again, it's awesome that you got your third grade spelling bee trophy, but it's probably not really needing to be on your resume. You can put some soft skills on your resume. Unfortunately, though, it is hard to really showcase that. If I say I'm a good leader, how? Why? Am I really going to be able to show that? Limit your timeline of accomplishments. Again, third grade's too far back. If it's from high school and you're 30 years old, probably not a good thing. I won my basketball regional championship. Awesome. If we're 20. If we're getting older than that, then those things, they tend to time out. They're not really relevant anymore. And again, customize skills to go along with a job posting. If you get your job description and they specifically say they need people who are good at customer service, then that soft skill might be something that you directly highlight because you're taking it straight from the job description to sell yourself. A few things to consider. Whatever your resume looks like. This one here is not a horrible example. Using this like little sub column on the side, not necessary, but when we really start to have a lot with our professional experience, that might be a way to keep it to one page in a little more creative fashion. Make sure you're using a consistent font. Can you make some things bold or stand out, like your objective, your experience, your skills? Yeah, but otherwise we want everything to be the same size. We want it to be in the same font. We want to keep the same layout all the way throughout. Do not go more than at most a front and back. And if we have to go to back, we're really starting to push it, but definitely don't go on to a third page or a second page front and back. Watch your spacing and consistency. Make sure everything looks very professional. If we put a space between parts, we want to put a space between every part. Use a little color if you can. You don't have a lot of leeway with this. Your name at the top, that might be a place where you put a little bit of a color. Green and blue tend to be your safest. Red comes on a little harsh sometimes. Yellows and oranges are hard to read. Could you use like a pink or a purple? Possibly, but they tend to come on a little feminine. And granted, being feminine is not a bad thing, but you never know your employer. That definitely, if you have stereotypically, but if you have an older employer or a male employer, those may not come off the best. So blue and green tend to be the safest. Do not put your references on your resume. Having references, you can have a reference sheet or you can put your references into your application itself, but do not put your actual references on your resume. It takes up space. And if we're putting in a lot of resumes at the same time, a lot of applications, it's always good to have more than 3 references. It typically will ask for 3. But if we have more than 3, we may have someone that's a better reference for one job than it might be for another. Also, watch unneeded spacing. It's really obvious when we're putting 5 or 6 spaces between section because we don't have a lot on our resume. It's okay to not have a lot on your resume. We want to fill it with those soft skills and highlight things that are good rather than just making it look kind of wonky by putting in extra spaces and indentions. To do or not to do when we are talking about selling ourselves and starting to get into an interview. Watch filler words. When we are really trying to highlight ourselves, we want to practice. We want to try not to use a lot of ums or likes or so. Mine is, if I am talking to someone, I have started picking up on this myself, but I'll say, gotcha, I got ya. And I say that a lot, and it's this filler word in and of itself. So we have to watch on our ticks. If we practice for interviews with another person, they will be able to tell us. Also, don't be afraid to practice in front of a mirror, because then you're going to be very, very focused on what you are doing. You may even find things that you do with your face or with your hands. If you're a person that really, really talks with their hands a lot, then practicing in front of a mirror will help you identify that. I am definitely that person. I fidget with my hands. In fact, if I am doing a presentation like today, even though I don't have my hands on screen a lot, I will not wear my wedding band because I will fidget with my ring the entire time. Have an answer or find or offer to find one. So if you were asked a question and you don't know the answer to it, don't be afraid to say, I don't know, but I would love to find out. And then I can get back to you maybe after our interview because I really don't know the answer to that. It's okay. Tie in your soft skills or buzzwords in your job description. They are going to list soft skills that they are looking for, whether it be communication, leadership, showing initiative. They are going to put those buzzwords in your job description that you are looking for. Have that listed. If you go to an interview and you have a pad folio or a piece of paper where you can take notes, have a list of buzzwords already written, things from that job description that you can tie back in. Don't get overly personal. We don't need to know your life story in an interview. If it's relevant, great, give it to us. Other than our tell us about yourself or tell me about yourself, there's not a whole lot of other room for that overly personal. If we were answering a question, make sure you're not giving too much, which is why it's always good to practice answering questions with someone else so they can tell you, no, that's too much. Don't need to know that. Try to answer with at least 30 seconds to a minute response. If we don't have at least 30 seconds, we're probably not being detailed enough. We're probably not actually answering the question. A lot of interview questions, even if they kind of sound like a yes or no question, they normally want you to answer more. It is never a bad thing if in the middle of an interview, they get to the next question and they say, you've already kind of answered this, but that's okay. We don't want to be talking for 5 minutes on a question, but we can add a little more detail. Have scenarios in mind already. Have a couple things that you are proud of that you have done or that really highlight those soft skills for selling yourself so that you can pick that up. And then in another question, you can say, well, this kind of relates to what I was saying before. In this instance, I did whatever it might be. Also have questions ready for your employer. It should be like a conversation. It is awkward as an employer to just sit there, ask a question, and then listen, and ask a question and listen. But we all know, we've all been through an interview where that is what it's like. If you can help make it a two-way street, they are more likely to remember you and appreciate that, because let me tell you, most employers, they like to talk about themselves too. So if you give them that opportunity, they're going to remember that, oh yeah, they asked me questions. You don't have to save all the questions till the end. They will definitely ask, do you have any questions for us? But you can also ask questions throughout. Don't ask about things that you could have already done your research on. You shouldn't ask them what their company does. If you don't already know that, asking that is just showing that you didn't really do a lot of research before this interview. Be ready for scenarios. They will ask questions, guaranteed. Tell me about a time when, or tell me how you would handle this. And these are a list of some of the most popular versions of that question. Tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult coworker. Tell me about a time you had to work as part of a team. You had to deal with a difficult customer. You received criticism and how you handled it. You had to give or you had to take feedback. You had to think on your feet to problem solve or to solve a problem. You had several projects at one time. How did you stay organized? How did you handle many projects at a time? Or what if we gave you too many things and there was no possible way you could accomplish them all? What would you do? All of those are those scenario type questions. Can you guys think of other scenario type questions? You can put it in the chat or just tell us, but what would be another example of these scenario questions that you've gotten before that are pretty common, or that maybe you ask your own employees? Can you think of any others? I know you've gotten them. You had to have. If you think of one, put it into the chat box. Also be very ready for the regulars. These are the questions that you will almost always get asked, maybe this blatantly in an interview. Number one, tell me about yourself. Why should we hire you? What are you bringing to the table that other applicants are not? Why do you want this job? Why did you apply? What's your biggest weakness? Which is almost as hard to answer as what's your biggest strength. Because as your weakness, you don't want to sound weak. But you know you have some weaknesses. So how can we do it, but do it gently? Also, what's your biggest strength? Because sometimes it's hard to brag about yourself. And if it's not hard to brag about yourself, be careful in not coming across too cocky, because that also can be a weakness. The other one is, what do you want to be doing in 5 years, 10 years, a year from now? Because they want to know, are you still going to be working from us or working for us? And if it's in a job where most people don't work with them for another 5 years, it's okay to say that. But how do we do that in a good way? How do we say that we really want to build on our skills and we want to do that here before hopefully moving on and doing something else? So we want to be able to sell ourselves, but we also want to be tactful in how we do that. You're going to be able to hear my coworker. We share a wall and I can hear him on a call. So I apologize if you hear Eric in the background. Also have questions for your employer. Do you have any hesitations about my qualifications? Do you think that my qualifications or my resume highlight the skills that you're looking for? Is there anything I didn't answer or anything that you might have more questions on that I might be able to make sound better? What would the first 30 days in the job look like? What would I actually be doing? I know what the job description says, but in my first week here or my first month here, what would I actually be doing? What would you say is your favorite part of working for this company or this business? Why do you like working here? What sort of characteristics do you feel the person coming into this position should have? Are there any hesitations about what I've answered for what you're looking for in this position? Are there any opportunities for an advancement? What could I do to possibly work up the chain of command? Also, don't be afraid to ask them to elaborate on something that you've heard in the media, from their website, something that they have going on. Do they have a new project, a new expansion, something that you've heard? Ask them about it. That's okay. Again, most of the time they like talking about themselves, talking about their company, and this gives them a way to further elaborate and sell themselves to you as a future employee. So let's practice. We have to sell ourselves. We have to answer questions. We have to answer those what if questions or tell me about a time practice. How do we do this? And here are a few things taken directly from the WVU Career Services page. Even if you are not affiliated with WVU, I know we have a lot of Marshall folks that are registered for these sessions, and they have a lot of good resources too. But I cannot tell you enough, the WVU Career Services page has so much good information. They have great templates for your cover letters, for your resumes, and you do not have to be a student to take advantage of those things. It is completely free on their website. Please do not hesitate to take advantage. But how do I prepare for an interview? I want to be positive. I want to have examples prepared. I want to prepare questions for them. I want to practice with someone else or in front of the mirror. I want to do my own research. And I want to plan ahead of time. What am I wearing? Which that also can play a huge deal. The biggest thing is to remember STAR. If you can remember STAR when you are answering questions, it will save you so much time and it will help you in answering questions. What was the situation? What was the task you had to accomplish? What did you do? What was your action? That's your A. And what were the results? STAR. Situation, task, action, and results. So what do you do when a team member refuses to complete his or her quota of the work? What do you do when a teammate is not pulling their weight? Have you ever worked with a lazy coworker? All of those questions are asking the same thing. So here is kind of doing that STAR method to answer. So when there are team conflicts or issues, I always try my best to step up as a team leader if needed. And I think that my communication skills make me an effective leader. We're selling those soft skills. Then we're going to ST. First part is STAR. For example, one time I was working on a team project and two of the team members got into a little bit of an argument and both refused to do what they were supposed to do. Our situation and our task. Action and result, they were both dissatisfied with their workloads. So I helped to meet with everyone where we talked about what was going on and what each team member was actually being tasked with. This made everyone a lot happier and more productive. And in the end, our project was a success. So what did I do and what happened because of it? Here are our questions. Always remember, always have prepared. Have an answer for these questions. Have a few situations in mind for these. Tell me about a time. Where was a time you had to work as a team and you had a difficult person you worked with? That might be the same question. A time dealing with feedback. That is definitely going to be something you'll have to use. Problem solving. When did you have to think on your feet? And when were you overwhelmed? When did you have to stay organized? All right. So what questions? And I'm going to come back. Oh, no, it did it again. I'm going to come back to this slide real quick and ask, does anyone have questions specifically on any of these questions? How you would answer them, or what might be a good thing? What might you say is your biggest weakness in an interview? What is something you struggle with on the job? My biggest weakness is I'm a perfectionist. That's a horrible answer, by the way. But it makes yourself sound good, doesn't it?